Okay, let's talk about this story because even I was surprised to hear about it. I didn't think it was going to be a done deal, and it's about the sequel to 2019's The Joker. Yes, they are making a sequel. So this week, some various publications in Hollywood reported this story. It's gaining traction. The Hollywood Reporter have covered it. I'm going to be mentioning this in the article from CineBlend in a few seconds. But it's an intriguing thing because Todd Phillips, if you don't know about this guy, I'm a big fan of Todd since the Hangover days, even before that actually with Old School, with Will Ferrell. But Todd is one of these guys that he's not very good at making a follow-up to a hit film. He's normally one of these guys that when he writes a film, he's writing it as a one-time deal only, and then he'll move on. Best case example, The Hangover. Great film. First film is a comedy classic, but when he made the sequels, they weren't as good as the original. Number 2, I felt was very dark and didn't need to go to certain places that it had to. And in the end as well, one of the ladyboy joke. Yeah, if you haven't seen the film, well, I'm just going to spoil it for you now. I saw that coming a mile off. In fact, the minute I knew the guys were going to end up in Thailand, I knew the ladyboy joke was going to come up. So that was no shock to me at all. And when the final reveal did happen, it wasn't that great anyway, and probably wouldn't have aged very well by today's standards. And Hangover 3, yeah, it was a good film, but had nothing to do with the hangover or having a hangover whatsoever. So that was quite funny. But if we go over to CineBlend here, this is a really interesting article. So as I mentioned, in 2019, after decades of appearing as an antagonist in the Batman movies and Suicide Squad, funny how they put that in brackets, the Joker finally snagged the cinematic spotlight for himself. Joaquin Phoenix starred as DC Comics clown Prince of Crime in Joker, which was met with a solid amount of positive and critical reception and rating over $1 billion at the box office. If I'm not mistaken as well, this film cost like $50 million to make, if I'm not mistaken. So that's a credit to Todd Phillips keeping everything under a tight budget. And of course, Todd and Joaquin said numerously in many interviews that they were not going to make a sequel, although Phoenix had said that he would be open if they had some really cool ideas. This is the kind of loose quote that was thrown around at the time. And I think, the whole point about this Joker film, it was a standalone Elseworld story. It wasn't part of the DC universe. This thing that Warner Brothers made up so they can catch up with Marvel's MCU, and it's not going to work in my opinion. I'm sorry, it won't. DC should just stick to what they know best and making their own kind of films. That's the funny thing. You got the Marvel films. Marvel I call the soft rock of the genre, yeah? They got that nice bright color palette, and then DC's like heavy metal, all dark, gloomy and grindy and dirty, and we like that. That's why I still think that Jason Momoa should have played Lobo in a DC film. He should have. He would have been perfect. Not as Aquaman, but as Lobo. He's perfect. So what I find interesting here is that it now looks like Joker 2 is further along in the development process than we thought. And further down, buried in a Hollywood Reporter piece about Hollywood's top attorneys, it's mentioned that Joker and co-writer-director Todd Phillips signed a deal to co-write the next Joker installment. Now, the fact they've got installment in inverted commas, I'm not sure what that means, but the fact that Todd Phillips is co-writing, that's a better idea, because if he was doing this by himself, I think the pressure would be too much for him. And the fact he's co-writing with somebody else, it might be David Goyer. I'm only speculating. I don't really know who they would bring in to be their main writer. Not Chris Terrio, for God's sake, don't use him. But outside of Joker 2 being mentioned as in development earlier this month, this is the biggest update we've gotten on the project for a long time. And considering how it was under Phillips' watchful eye that Joker came together, it's only logical that Warner Brothers and DC films would bring him back for another round of maniacal clown-induced chaos. Now, I'm just going to stop that right here and just mention the fact that if they do make this sequel if it does come out. The one thing that I would like to see now, this was kind of hinted at in the first film. We saw Thomas Wayne, we saw that nod to Batman, the Adam West Batman, where young Bruce slides down the fireman's pole. You remember that scene? And I thought that was kind of like a really subtle nod to everything that is Batman in a non-Batman movie. But if they do a sequel, my pitch would be have Arthur Fleck, Joaquin Phoenix's character, in a mental asylum. And I'm going to use that term, something like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. One of the inmates or one of the patients that he meets there, they form this friendship, but then that other patient, he's got a fascination with bats, the Batman. We would have to assume that Batman, if this is years later, maybe a few years later after the first film, we could probably have an idea of a Batman, or we could see the genesis of the Batman in this mental asylum. So when Arthur Fleck has this conversation with Bruce Wayne, or an alternate version of Bruce Wayne, it could be he sees him as a bat-like figure. That could be very, very interesting in terms of hero and villain psychology. I think it can go in that direction. And I know my pitch is a weak pitch, but this is what I always envisaged that it would happen. Like, if you're going to bring Batman into a indie Joker film, make him an imaginary figure, nothing that is actually real. If you've seen the Tom Hardy film Bronson, that's probably the best way they could model this film on, maybe use that as a template for what they would do. Because don't forget, the original Joker was based on the King of Comedy, the Robert De Niro, Martin Scorsese film from 1982. So it wasn't like a completely original take on what they were doing with the Joker film, although what they did with the character and the world building was very good, in my opinion. It was excellent. So I'm a bit worried about what they're doing with this sequel. And again, it seems from what I've just read in that piece there from Cineblend, there are some legal wranglings. Like, I suppose the other side of the coin is, if you're going to make a film that it costs $50 million and then makes over $1 billion worldwide at the box office, and not a single shooting incident at a cinema, this is what they were all worried about. In fact, all that hyperbole about every cinema showing this film, they're going to have armed security because people might go nuts, and that never happened, actually elevated the hype for the movie. People were going crazy online for the right and wrong reasons about this film as well. But I will say that I'm not going to be hopeful or hyped about this sequel at the moment. Let's see a teaser trailer. Let's see a full trailer. I'll still be here on this channel if I haven't been taken down by then. and yeah, I might have a different thought process when the time comes. But that's just been my quick take today, guys, on this new story about Todd Phillips co-writing a sequel to The Joker from 2019. I'm not very happy. It seems quite a lot of people aren't happy online either. A lot of fans are saying you should have left it alone as a standalone piece. That would have been perfect. I'm in agreement with that. But what do you think? Leave a comment below, leave a like, and that's all I'm going to say on this matter. See you on the next video.